So we're going to be restoring the trunk on this 72 Nova, and all things considering, it's in really good shape. But you just don't know the condition until you strip it down to bare metal. But at the same time, doing a job like this gives us the ability to try out different tools. We're going to compare some professional tools and some DIY tools, see which one works for the job. Is it worth paying the extra cost? But even if things look good, don't be surprised if you run into surprises like we did. My name is Trooper Max, and I'm restoring a car that's been off the road since 1977. But I've never done this before. I've taken the time to do my research, and I'm building the car of my dreams, hoping to inspire others to do the same. So today's the day we tackle the trunk of our 72 Nova. Now at this point in time, everything's opened up on the cars. We have the quarter panels off. We had just finished doing the interior. We had stripped everything, and we're ready for our rust proofing with Ospho and then epoxy primer. But prior to doing that, I actually want to strip the inside of the trunk here, because this is just gonna be such a mess. If I throw my quarters on, they go on like this, they get stuck here, all that is in here. And the second thing is, check it out. Look at that access. I could easily work on the trunk, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna strip the trunk, get it all ready to go before I move further with this project. It's just much easier to do it in stages. So what we're gonna do is we gotta check out the condition of this trunk. And overall, I know that this is the best part of the car because there was no interior here, and I could see both underneath and on top. However, I don't exactly know 100% the condition till we strip it, but it just goes to show you, having it open with no interior doesn't hold moisture as much, it just lasts much longer. So we're gonna check it out. I have a whole host of tools I'm gonna try, just using my regular lineup of tools I got. We'll see what works best, and we'll just get started on this. As usual, we're gonna start with our rust fighting workhorse, the old SCT. Let's get started. So we've concluded our preliminary sanding, and we have some findings. You know, I'm always impressed of the fact that we're using all the same tools, techniques, and yet we're always learning new things. And in this case, we learned a couple things about the grinder. So first of all, we use this attachment over here. This is the coarse brush, and it did a pretty good job, but I found it rather slow. It did a good job for removing things like seam sealer and all that, but for the actual paint and rust, it didn't do a whole hell of a lot. So I switched over to the finer one, this guy over here, and it did a much better job. Now this I was impressed with, it did a good job. However, the thing I hate about this is it started falling apart really quickly and there's just shards of metal coming at you. So this is quite painful and really unenjoyable after like 10 minutes. So what I did is I switched to this old death wheel. Now I'm not sure if you're even allowed to have this on here, but I put it on. I've done this technique before and it did really, really well. Like this was the quickest technique. It absolutely tore through all the metal and paint and whatnot. You still get, you know, some pieces come off, but I find this you can use for, you know, half hour, maybe an hour, and then they start coming off. Whereas the other one, it was only minutes in, so it's good. However, the problem with the grinder is because of the speed, there is a huge element of danger. So you have to be so diligent not to hit something because it's gonna go flying. The grinder is just not necessarily the best tool for the job because clearly the winner was this guy right over here. So this is the wire brush attachment for the drill. And man, oh man, this thing just tears through everything. It looks like it's not gonna do much because it's so small, but the speed at which this strips is actually quicker than using the grinder. So you better believe I'm gonna use this. No cords, no element of danger. There's a little bit of kickback, but it's so much less. And then what I also started doing is using these attachments over here. I have an 18-inch locking, so it keeps my bit, doesn't fall off. And then I just have a shorter guy. And then obviously you could take it off. And the different size wheels and this, the combination of this stuff is what's allowed me to do all this stuff. I've been able to get into areas that I didn't think I was gonna be able to access. You know, early on I didn't have these attachments, I was just using that, and I couldn't get in some areas. When I started using them, all of a sudden, bam, I'm getting into areas I didn't think I can get into. So this is why I'm doing the sandblasting challenge. To date, I have not had to use a sandblast on this. I said in the quarter panel video, when I'm gonna be doing this, I'm leaving this open because I'm gonna be sandblasting and there's gonna be sand everywhere. Well, I'm gonna keep the challenge going. I'm actually going to try not to use the sandblaster even for this part back here, even though I said I was going to. Let's see how much we can do. If we need the sandblaster, we'll use it. But damn it, I wanna see what we can do because I know a lot of people don't have it and it's just another tool that most people cannot have in their shops or they don't have the ability to do. So let's keep it simple. But prior to using any of those tools, we of course used the SCT and it did an amazing job. This thing's a superstar and I'm really impressed with it. However, now that we're getting into this, I got half of it done. This is a knockoff. I'm really curious if we use the professional version, which is this one, the Eastwood SCT, which one will work better? This is 150 bucks, this cost me 550. Mind you, I'm Canada, there was import fees, freight and shipping and all this stuff, duties, so this was so much more expensive. I've used this thing on the whole job and I'm really impressed. For the 150 bucks, it's really worth it. However, I can't get into some areas. I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, man, this thing could probably access areas I can't with that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the stripping drum on and we'll try it out. All right, so these are our stripping drums. This is the knockoff stripping drum. That's what we've been using. And in here is the genuine one. Let's take a look how they look. I haven't even opened it yet. Huh. Visually speaking, I don't see a whole hell of a lot of difference. If I was to remove this, I probably wouldn't be able to tell which one's which. Anyways, let's throw the Eastwood on just to make it fair, and we'll see how it does. So we got our tools in. Right away I notice the locking mechanisms are different. So this one has a bolt, and I gotta tell you, I really like it. It's super easy, it doesn't strip. This one has an Allen key, which I'm not a fan of right now, I'll tell you that right now. These darn things just strip so easily, so I'm not a fan of Allen keys. In this case, even though this is a knockoff, I actually prefer the knockoff locking system better. So take this thing off, and I'll change it and we'll get started. All right, let's do a comparison. New drums on both tools to make sure it's fair. Right away, I'll tell you the size difference of these things. This one's a lot wider. This one's a lot more ergonomic. The weight feels almost exactly the same. All right, let's do a real-time comparison here. First of all, the knockoff. All right, not bad. I'm not sure why it was so much harder this time than the first time around. But wow, okay, let's try the SCT now. Wow, okay. Holy cow. Okay, we have a clear winner here. Obviously, SCT is more powerful. It definitely has more RPMs. It's got more horsepower than this thing. This one's still good, but after using the SCT, my goodness, is that fast. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna strip this area here and just see exactly how it works. Alrighty, I think I've used both products now and have an opinion on this stuff. So I've used this the whole project and I've been really happy with it. But after using the SCT, I gotta say, man, this thing's amazing. The balance is much better, it's much more ergonomic, and it's way more powerful, way quicker. So I was even able to get in some areas I couldn't with this thing. So I definitely prefer the Eastwood. You get what you pay for in this case, you know what I mean? I think what makes sense is if you're a DIYer doing this for the first time like me, this is not a bad option, but you're a professional, you want to do this all the time, this is definitely the way to go. So more money definitely gets you what you pay for. It is worth buying the SCT, but both great products. And the last thing I want to talk about is the actual condition. So we've done some car archaeology and we only really found rust in one area. Ironically, under the seam sealer, which is pretty much supposed to stop moisture, but yet it still got in. So it's funny, in the areas over here, it shrunk and cracked, so water got in, is pretty obvious. However, in some other areas, it didn't shrink, and yet it's still rusty. That means water's still getting in. So it's supposed to be waterproof, but it's 50-year-old technology, and it just shows you that it can hold moisture and rust. So got to remove it all, start from scratch. So now that we have our preliminary sanding techniques down, we know we're going to be using our drill with the wire wheel attachment, and we're going to be using our SCT. I think for now we're just going to be leaving the air tools. When we need to get to them, we'll get to them. There still are a couple tools we can use, but I really want to focus on these ones for now, keeping it simple. Now, as great as this guy has been, I'm not a glutton for punishment. I've used it for a long time. I think what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting away for now. We're going to be using the actual Eastwood SCT because I don't like paying that much, and I feel like this should be easier if I just use this. So I'm going to be using the SCT from now on. There's still a lot of areas I can hit that I haven't done yet. So I'm going to be grabbing this, we're going to be grabbing the wire brush, and we're going to do that. I got 3 complete boxes of wire wheel attachments. I came to play. Alrighty, so we've concluded the secondary level of sanding. Now the entire bottom is sanded and we know the condition. Overall, it's excellent. There's not that many problems. I did find a little bit more rust along the seams where the tail panel is, but that's to be expected. No holes or anything. We will be doing more heavy duty sanding in this area later on, but what we gotta do next is before we finish all this stuff, we gotta conclude what's on the ground here. And we've run into a couple problems. So I'm just about done with my sanding, I'm ready to move on, and all of a sudden I spot this over here. Just a little bit of rust. Doesn't look too bad. I grabbed the old wire brush, ran it over, and it exposed a little bit more damage than I was expecting, but no holes. So I think at this point, what most people do is, sand it down, throw a little putty on, call her a day. But the thing is, if you look on the other side, you got the same thing going on. So what does that mean? You got no moisture on the inside here. That means something's going on underneath. Now this looks awfully familiar to me, so what am I gonna do? let's see what happens here. All right, contestants, let's see what's behind door number 1. It's a new mess. Look at that. That's why it's rusting. That's why it's rusting. This is why we do what we do. All of a sudden, those little rust specks are now much more of a big deal. Look at the size of the holes now. Am I so crazy now? See, this is what happens underneath. So we're gonna have to cut it out, both sides, you know, and it makes you wonder, you know, underneath me, this cross piece continues going, and obviously it's rusty under there, and it makes you wonder, was it really worth saving this floor? I still have to sand underneath. It's gonna take forever. I see a trend developing here, you know, 2 pieces of metal sandwiched together, rust forms in between, destroys your work. This is what seems to be happening on this build. You know, this has all taught me a lesson. I had the same problem on the floor there, even though a lot of the stuff looks good. I'm learning with a car this old, if the frame rails are good and the cross beams and everything, it's good to save all that stuff, but get rid of the whole trunk, get rid of the whole floor, start from scratch. It would just be so much easier than spending all this time. I would have been done already. I still have to sand underneath, and this took me like a day and a half to sand. It's just a lot of wasted time. I think it's worth spending the extra money. But in this case, we made a decision, we're saving this, so now I gotta keep patching it up. And it really bothers me knowing there's more rust underneath me here and under the frame rails. But all I'm gonna be able to do is put internal frame coating there and keep that going as long as possible. And I know some people are gonna be wondering, what's the point of doing all this if you're not gonna treat the frame rails from above as well? Well, the thing is, it's only really the laminated metal that gets in this kind of shape. If you look at things like frame rails, this is what a frame rail will look like. It's in the same shape on this cross beam over here. I've looked inside the frame rails in some areas, and it's the same condition as this cross member over here. Because there's an air space, it actually doesn't rust as bad. So if you clean this, there really isn't much rust at all. It's nice and shiny. So if we throw our internal frame coating in there, it's gonna protect it from years to come. There is some rust where the spot welds are, but it's not the end of the world. It's lasted 50 years, it could last another 50. When we put our frame coating inside there, it's gonna last a long time. The problem is this car was driven in the winter, so there's a lot of salt and whatnot. That's why this is happening. But because we're tackling all these areas with laminated metal, we can save this car and make it last. Now we gotta clean this sucker up. Alrighty, actually spent the time to do side number 2. Took the grinder, cut it out, got rid of the spot welds, and with a bit of a fight, I was able to remove this part. And you know what? Turns out side number 2 is actually worse than side number 1. Because if you press it, that doesn't sound healthy to me. The other side, it's a little more solid. And to be honest with you, this thing is right at the end of its lifespan. Any further, I would say trash it, get a new one, but you know what? It's savable. We're gonna keep it. But had we not done this, I guarantee you in a few years, all this stuff will be gone. So now let's clean it up and restore it. So that concludes another long day of sanding. That's 2 full days now sanding this thing. And I'm still not done. I probably got another full day, I would say. No, there's not much left, but it's all little details, hard to reach areas, and this is really time consuming. It's taking a lot more time than I expected. So before I shut her down for the day, what I'm gonna do is actually treat the inside of those, because once I close that up, I can't access them again. So what I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna take a compressor and a vacuum and clean them out. Alrighty, if I put the hose in there, should get rid of some stuff inside there. As long as I get it all the way down there and just vacuum it, the frame coating that we're gonna be using is much more effective. Just wanna get rid of the loose debris. All right, so we're gonna be using the Eastwood internal frame coating. This is pretty much the only thing we can do at this point. If I put the tube in here, shoot it in, and from underneath, it's just gonna protect it as good as possible. So I'm not removing any rust in there because this stuff actually works better with rust. That's the way it's designed. Pretty much the best thing we could do. Maybe 30 years from now, I'm gonna have to rip this apart and do it all brand new, but this is really gonna slow things down. You know, I'm pretty pleased. I just restored that one part back there. It's nice and shiny, so I know the metal has a lot of structural integrity. Let's just keep it that way. This is gonna make a hell of a mess. It always does. I'm just gonna put it as far as I can and shoot it and come out slowly. Okay, the can feels almost empty, so I know a lot of material came out. It always does. This is one of those do the best with what you got scenarios, and it's just dripping. Now it's dripping here too. I can see moisture. This is the beginning of it, and it's just pouring out of there, so that's good. So I'm just gonna finish it off by hitting this area. And I know this is gonna make a mess, but it's the way it's done. Well, you see, look at that. I probably should be catching stuff, but I really do not care what my floor looks like. It's super beat up as it is. I'm doing it a favor as far as I'm concerned. Okay, I'll shove it in there and finish it off. Oops. That's the best we can do. Do that for both sides. All right, another full day of sanding completed. And I'm still not done. There's still parts I haven't been able to do, a lot of hard to reach areas. This job is not finished. Probably have another half day, I would say, just to get those hard parts done. This is not easy. This job is really beginning to take its toll on me. You know, I didn't imagine the trunk would be so much work. I just thought it'd be a couple days, boom, get her done, no problem. And at the same time, you know, I've done so many videos on other people's cars and their stories, and some people have been averaging, you know, 5 to 8 years doing their cars. And I'm like, how did it take them that long? You know, some of them 12 years even. I now see, you know, for people doing this just on the weekend, like all the time and effort it takes to do this, and I'm doing this full time, you know, Monday to Friday, full-time hours. I just concluded 2 full months of sanding, and I'm still not done. I still have to do the bottom. I'm not totally finished here. I have to do the outside. It takes forever. It is so much work. It would have been a lot quicker to sandblast this than do it by hand. I've worked on the car just over 100 days, and 2 months of that was doing this. So it's a lot of work. Like, you want a classic car project, you got it, right? It's a lot of work. I cannot stress the amount of work this is, but it's getting done. You know what I mean? I made the goal of doing this, and here we go. So we're just gonna keep going. There's still so much to do. It's not gonna get done as quick as I thought. That's just the way she goes. So I'm really behind on this one, but that's the way it is. So next thing I'm gonna do is, before I close these boxes up, what I wanna do is actually treat them, because there's still rust on here. I could do a better job if I use my Ospho. Been using it for everything, so I'm just gonna do it. Crack her open and start getting rid of some of this rust. This will just ensure that our work will last as long as humanly possible. because I don't want to do this again. So we're just going to dip our Ospho, put it in, and it's already starting to look shiny. Take a scuff pad and just start working it. And right away, you can see all that rust build up. Like, look how dirty it starts getting. I sanded the hell out of this, and yet it's still coming off like that. Never ceases to amaze me how well this stuff works. That's awesome for you. It's great stuff. Rub it off, and then do it again, and just keep going. Here, let's do a little before and after. See, this one looks pretty good. This is before and after. As you can see, Ospho does a great job. So there we go, Ospho was on, and overall did a pretty good job. Now, this is actually pretty good considering how deep the rust is. This is probably some of the deepest rust I've had yet. So it did a pretty good job removing it. Now, the thing is, I'm not gonna remove all the rust. I don't have to. All I have to do is put enough product on that this is actually gonna convert to a paintable surface. So this will turn black if we did this correctly. If not, it's still gonna stay rusty. It might need another coat. This just allows us to be able to paint this and move on. When we put our epoxy primer on the inside, this is just gonna ensure that this lasts as long as it possibly can. So I'm pretty happy with it. And I've had people ask me, you know, doing this project, what is the best tool for sanding? So what's the best tool? And the answer to that is none. The best thing you could do is sandblast. If people were asking me if I would do this again, the answer is no, I wouldn't do it the same way. I would actually cut the whole floor out, I would raise the whole car up, and that way I could stand in here and just shoot the inside, sandblast it. I really wish I would have done that in the first place. If you look at this cross member over here, it looks brand new. It looks incredible, you know? I wish I had all of them like that. Knowing they're all rusty under there, even if it's gonna take forever to actually rot away, it still bothers me. So that's what you could do. This could have been brand new. So lesson learned there, don't make my mistake. It's a new day, yes it is. Check out our gas tank brackets. Look at that, Ospho really did an amazing job. You know, the before and after this is just pretty incredible. Check it out. So I have to sand here today. A lot of these miserable, hard to reach areas. Like, look at all that access we got here. I can actually do the inside of my quarter panels before I put my quarter panels. So let's just get started. Can't believe I'm saying this, but end of yet another full day sanding. Yeah, you should see the inside of the car. It almost looks like when I started, filthy. It's unbelievable how much this stuff takes, you know, and I'm just spent. Like this job is really taxing me. Ended up sanding all on the inside there. I even did behind the seat, which is an area I didn't think I can get into, so I did that area. It's all done. And then one of the things before I left this open was because I wanted to do some sandblasting in here and make sure stuff doesn't go in here. Well, with the use of a needle scaler and a rotary tool, I was actually able to reach areas I couldn't before. So there's no reason to use a sandblaster in here, which is the whole purpose why I left these off in the first place. Now, I don't need to. So after doing all this sanding and everything, there's only one place that's left. It's right over here, the old final boss. I left this open and I was gonna sandblast here, but to be honest with you, after everything I've done, because this is the only place left, I am sure as hell not sandblasting. I'm gonna see what I could do. All right, my wire brushes have enjoyed this bench the entire job. I think it's my turn. Yeah, I think I earned it. cuff pad. It's really loosened up now, like it's not off, but yeah. Like, I think if I pour Ospho in there, I think if I pour it in there and then just scrub it, I think it'll be pretty good. But that's for another day. I'll do it when I'm doing the rest of the Ospho in the car. I think for today we're gonna shut her down. Alrighty, so it's a new day. We're finally done the sanding. It's time to move on to the next step. What I want to do next is actually add something to the trunk before we start closing things up. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So when doing projects like this, you always want to think ahead. So one of the things that we're going to have to deal with is the fact that we're putting in a bigger fuel pump in our gas tank because we're going to have an LS, so it's going to require more volume. And should something happen and break, it's top mounted. So if it breaks, you got to take the whole gas tank off. I figure, let's think further ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make an access panel here. I was looking at kits online. They're like $200 just for a piece of metal and some screws. It just seems like a rip-off to me. So we're going to make our own. The supplies cost me $50. So we're going to manufacture our own. We're going to put an access panel here. And should the fuel pump die, bam, we could replace it. We can change it. It's just thinking ahead. Let's go build this thing. So these are the supplies we're working with. Just a 3/16 piece of stock metal here. And at the same time, we have a 12 by 18 16 gauge plate. So we're going to be using that. And finally, some button head hex bolts. So we're going to be putting these on. So I've already measured where the center of my pump is. Then I'm going to take my piece of 3/16, miter the corners 90 degrees, and then picture frame it around the edges. I'm just going to be taking this piece of metal, cutting it to 12 by 12. Once I like the fit, I'll just weld the frame together, and then I'm ready to start drilling some holes. And this will allow me to take a tap and die set and just get it ready to receive bolts. Now that it's all ready to go, it's just a matter of taking it to the car and putting it in. But first, let's finish tackling this rust. Now that's much better. Hey guys, what's going on, huh? What's going on? Max is pretty happy, huh? You know, if the big grimace didn't give it away, I'm sure the quarter panel did. Everything came together, super happy. Time to get this trunk finished, right? So here I'm sitting this thing and all I gotta do now is grab my Ospho and put it on. Now, just to mention, I already did go through with the grinder on this side and the inside and just slightly sanded it. And by the way, when I was doing it, the amount of debris that was in here from using a grinder, even though I shoved stuff between the quarter panel, It was crazy, and I had to actually scrape it. I had to sand it for another hour inside the car here. So that's why I didn't do the Ospho. I wanted to wait. But now all my major cutting and welding's finished. So all the dirty stuff is done. At least I hope so. I just wanted to do all that grinding first so that the inside isn't affected, because the heat from the outside could mess up the inside. You always got to think action reaction, right? I just want to mention one thing. Before I do any sort of Ospho, I've always been cleaning up my surfaces. So I take something like this. I've been using this prep ball. This is good stuff. It's been pretty good stuff. The prep ball, happy with it. It also removes the wax and like grease and seam sealer, acoustic sealant, all that stuff pretty easily. So that's really good. So because this is sort of a paint in a way, you know what I mean? Like you're priming it, so you don't want all that dirt and debris there. So all I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna grab my Ospho, and there's no easy way to do it. That's right, I'm gonna get on my back here, get in all those areas, just cover this whole car with Ospho, every single piece of metal that's visible, get it cleaned up, and just get it covered in Ospho. This way, it won't flash rust on us. Man, that looks awesome. I'm so pleased with this. I cannot believe the trunk looks in this condition. Now, it wasn't in bad shape, all things considering. However, I know how much work this was. I thought this was gonna be like a 3-day job. It turned into 2 weeks. It was brutal. It wasn't a lot of fun. But at the same time, this is the kind of thing when restoring a car like this, for the first time, you're learning a lot of things. So that seems to be a constant thing for me. Yeah, I'm learning more and more every day, but you know, I look at it and knowing that it's in this shape, pretty much factory, is pretty exciting because this is super rare. Now it's done, and at the same time we've done some upgrades. Having that fuel access is really cool. And you know what, this has made me think a little differently. There's a lot of stuff I was just gonna buy and put on the car. I'm really gonna start trying to think outside the box. What can I make myself? How can I modify things? How can I be creative? You know, I'm just thinking about this car. I was looking at frame connectors the other day, and they're like $1,000 for something so simple. So I think I'm gonna make some frame connectors. And there's a couple other things I got in mind too, some things I never even thought of before, but that's what happens. The more you do this, the more confidence you get. You just keep going out of your comfort zone and try new things. What's the worst that can happen, right? I'm really proud of this job. So now I'm gonna move on. At least now it's an Ospho. Gives me time to work on the bottom of my car, which is the final boss of sanding. That's the part I'm not looking forward to. I know it's gonna be brutal under there. It's not gonna be a lot of fun. I'm not putting on a rotisserie, I'm not flipping this, I'm not even doing a tip over jig. I'm doing it the way 98% of the people are gonna do it, on jack stands, on your back with the dirt on your face. So we're gonna do that, and I'm just gonna find out different tricks and tools and techniques we use to make this job easier, because I know a lot of people are gonna be tackling this as well. Let's see if we can learn something together. We hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.